Hello everyone, today I want to talk to you about China introducing a rare earth tracking system. Not only does it make it clear at a glance who buys their rare earths, but also, the US proactively requested a call with China, and Trump said that Xi Jinping's attitude was very tough. According to Xinhua news agency, on the evening of June 5, President Xi Jinping took a call with US President Trump at Trump's request. In just a few words, an important message was revealed. China took the call at the US's request, meaning it was the US side that initiated the conversation. This official phone call between Trump and President Xi is significant. The last time they spoke directly was 5 months ago, back when Trump hadn't even been sworn in yet. This is the first direct call between Trump and President Xi since Trump took office.
Ahead of the call, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met the new US Ambassador to China, Scott Brownell, in Beijing on June 3.
He urged the US to create the necessary conditions for China-US relations to get back on track. Wu Xinbo, director of the Center for American Studies at Fudan University, analyzed that Washington needs to take concrete actions first to address Beijing's concerns and foster a positive atmosphere. Otherwise, China would consider that now is not the right time for a phone call.
Wu noted that Wang's meeting with Brownell wasn't a mere courtesy, as Brownell had already met Vice Foreign Minister Ma Zhaosu on May 20. This suggests Wang conveyed significant messages.
Right after Wang Yi and Burns met, Trump immediately made some positive remarks. On June 4th, he posted on social media saying, "I like Chinese President Xi Jinping. I've always liked him, but his stance is very tough. It's very hard to reach an agreement with him." To sum up, Trump is actively trying to create a good atmosphere and wants to have a phone call with President Xi. When you show courtesy, you're usually asking for something in return, and one of those things is definitely rare earths. The US and China have been playing hardball with each other over high-end chips. They really have taken things to the next level. Beijing has been holding on to the powerful weapon of rare earths without using it, but now, finally, they've decided to play that card, and they're going all out. On June 4th, citing 3 sources, it was reported that apart from China introducing export control policies, China has already implemented a tracking system for the rare earth industry. According to these insiders, China's tracking system came into effect last week, requiring manufacturers to submit additional information online, including transaction volumes and customer names, to help trace the flow of rare earth magnets. Supporters say that China announced a high-level plan to establish an information tracking system for rare earth products back in June last year, but it was only last week that it was actually put into use. Reports believe that this extra layer of scrutiny shows that China is stepping up its controls. Export controls on rare earths and related magnets may become a long-term policy, especially since China holds a near monopoly in production in these sectors. According to people familiar with the matter, the Chinese government's long-term goal is to track the entire rare earth production chain, not just rare earth magnets, in order to strengthen industry oversight and crack down on smuggling, illegal mining, and tax evasion. Of course, the main target is the United States, particularly American military-industrial companies. At the same time, the US and other countries have been hoping that China would lift its export ban, but the chances of that happening are extremely slim. Tim Chung, founder of Singapore market intelligence firm Edge Research, said, "Our current prediction is that China will continue to maintain its rare earth export control mechanism, because this is one of China's trump cards." On April 2 this year, President Trump's administration imposed so-called reciprocal tariffs on countries around the world, and then kept raising tariffs on China, eventually reaching as high as 25%. Afterwards, China introduced a series of countermeasures. In addition to raising tariffs, they also added new export controls on strategic medium and heavy rare earths. At the time, the Financial Times already quoted industry insiders as saying that China was setting up an export licensing system. According to Reuters, as the world's largest supplier and exporter of rare earth magnets, China's current approval delays in this sector have already disrupted the supply chains of car manufacturers, semiconductor companies, and other firms. As their reserves run out, global magnet manufacturers have already started shutting down some production lines. After an Indian electric vehicle manufacturer made similar complaints last week, the German Automotive Industry Association became the latest group to speak out on the same day about being affected by China's export controls.
Hildegard Müller, president of the German Association of the Automotive Industry, VDA, said on June 5, "Without swift changes, delays or even halts in German auto production are unavoidable. Mueller explained that rare earth magnets are essential for everything from wiper motors to brake sensors, and the industry struggles to maintain steady output. She added that China has issued some permits to a few producers, including Volkswagen suppliers, but these fall short of ensuring sufficient parts.
The report also mentioned that from Tokyo to Washington, China's export controls have caused a strong shock at both the corporate board and government levels. Officials are urgently looking for alternatives, worried that new car production could come to a halt by late summer this year. Diplomats from India, Japan, and Europe, as well as car manufacturers and other industry executives, are urgently seeking meetings with Chinese officials to push for faster approval of rare earth magnet exports. There are a few issues here. First, why is China so slow in approving rare earth magnet exports to the EU, Japan, India, and other countries when the main target is the US? I think China wants everyone to feel the pressure, so they understand that they can't sell out China during trade negotiations with the US. Right now, China doesn't need to start bilateral talks with each country yet. The EU, Japan, and India all have strong incentives to cooperate with the US against China in exchange for the US reducing some of their tariffs. China needs to block this path in advance. The second option is that if the US wants something, China can relax its supply of rare earths for civilian use to the US, but you have to offer something in exchange. I believe China wants the US to come up with a real solution to the tariff issue, not just a 90-day suspension. Also, from now on, China will review each rare earth export case by case. If the US breaks the agreement after negotiations, say, after 3 days or 2 days, they introduce new policies to suppress China, then things will change. China can cut off the supply of rare earths at any time. Since everyone is turning supply chains into weapons against China, the US was actually the first to weaponize the chip supply chain. And every day they talk about decoupling from China, cutting off supply chains. Now, if China decides to weaponize its rare earth supply, let's see if the US really has the ability to decouple when it comes to rare earths. Thirdly, will China stop supplying American military-industrial companies? What about rare earth magnets and other heavy rare earths? It doesn't necessarily look like it, but take magnets as an example. Because of their strong magnetic properties and stability, they have become essential components in many weapon systems, especially in things like missile radars and jet engines. These components are widely used. The US keeps selling weapons to Taiwan, and Taiwan uses those missiles to target mainland China. So why should China keep supplying rare earth magnets to American arms manufacturers to make weapons that threaten itself? The US can cut off high-end chips to Huawei, so why can't China stop supplying magnets to the US? After the companies stop supplying, American military giants will have to start all over again, just like Huawei did back then. They'll have to pay sky-high prices to buy alternative products, and if there aren't any alternatives, they'll just have to develop them themselves. What China is doing is simply fighting fire with fire. On another note, I want to talk about how it's really speechless when a country can be hypocritical to the extreme. On June 4th, the US and Australian consulates in Hong Kong and Macau lit candles to commemorate the June 4th incident. US Senator Marco Rubio also issued a statement on June 4th, saying he salutes those who have been persecuted for demanding accountability for June 4th. While the US appears to show this kind of supreme concern for an incident that happened in China 35 years ago, on the very same day, the US cast a vote at the United Nations Security Council. It was decided that Algeria would make several demands on behalf of the Arab countries. The humanitarian resolution on the ceasefire in Gaza was approved by 14 countries, but it failed to pass because the temporary representative to the United Nations, Dr. Xie Xie, did not vote against it. This happened just 8 days earlier, on the morning of May 28. In addition, the Security Council held a meeting on the Palestinian issue, where the permanent observer of Palestine to the United Nations, Mansour, spoke out, accusing Israel of its crimes. When Mansour talked about the tragic experiences of children in Gaza, he was so furious that he slammed the table and ended up breaking down in tears at the venue. Mansour said the situation of children in Gaza is unbearable. I have grandchildren myself, so I know what children mean to a family. We can only watch helplessly as the children suffer, but there's nothing we can do. This is beyond what any normal person can bear. But no matter how much the Palestinians cry out, the US just turns a blind eye. On March 13 this year, the Gaza health authorities announced. Since the conflict broke out on October 8, 2023, the death toll in Gaza has already exceeded 50,000. On that day, the recorded number was 50,021, and the number of injured reached 33,000. Among them, a large number of children and women have died. When we see so many children in Gaza on TV, holding empty plates and rushing towards the trucks distributing food, it really feels like a knife to the heart. There's a Palestinian doctor named Najah, and while she was saving the wounded in the hospital, 9 out of her 10 children at home were killed in a bombing. You could say that under Israel's missiles, Najah's youngest child, who suffered burns to the face, was only 3 years old. The US just watches so many people die in Gaza every day, but still stubbornly supports Israel. Humanitarian disasters are happening every day over there, but on the other side, people are still talking about something that happened in China 36 years ago, lighting candles for it. I'd suggest the US Consulate General in Hong Kong and Macau just keep those candles burning every day and mourn for the children in Gaza instead. Right now, there are 2 wars in the world, one in Gaza and the other in Ukraine, both directly orchestrated by the US. After World War II, the US supported the establishment of a Jewish state on Palestinian land. They stirred up trouble in the Middle East, taking advantage of chaos to control the region's oil. In the 1980s, the US also launched so-called color revolutions, targeting socialist countries worldwide, aiming to bring down their old rival, the Soviet Union. In the end, they succeeded in toppling the Iron Curtain. The Soviet Union also broke up into 15 separate countries. China was affected by that wave of color revolutions too, which led to the Tiananmen Square incident. But China chose a different path, sticking to its own socialist system. Unlike Russia and other Eastern countries, which adopted the shock therapy promoted by the US, suddenly switching to an American-style market economy and democratic system overnight. Over the past few decades, China has developed very well, while Russia has been pressured by the US to the point where it can barely breathe. This broke the promise made to Russia, with NATO continuously expanding eastward, getting closer and closer to Russia, and even wanting to bring Ukraine into the alliance. If missile units were ever deployed right on Russia's border, Moscow would only be about 400 kilometers within their range. These actions have ultimately led to a war. Of course, the US absolutely doesn't mind fighting, because every year, its military-industrial complex makes a fortune from war, so the more conflicts, the better for them. Miaoligua directly or indirectly participated in more than 200 wars in more than 200 years. According to a release from the U.S. State Department, in the 2024 fiscal year, U.S. foreign military equipment sales hit a record high, reaching $318.7 billion, which is a significant increase of 29% compared to last year. This marks the 3rd consecutive year of rapid growth. The Stockholm International Peace Research Institute published a report this March stating that during these 2 wars, global arms exports saw a sharp rise, with the U.S. share of global arms exports jumping from 30% in 2019 to 43%. The US ranks number 1 in arms exports globally, and its share is equal to the combined total of countries ranked 2nd to 9th. The US is basically a war profiteer, always looking to boost arms sales to fill the massive deficit created by its so-called beautiful bills, which have led to a $2.4 trillion fiscal deficit. They're using people's blood to fill their financial black hole. Lastly, I want to express my respect for the Palestinians in Gaza who are still resisting despite the relentless US-backed missile strike.